Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do something unique. We're going to do a buyer's guide, which would be the common issues for the 1999 to 2003 Acura CL and Acura TL. This would also apply to some Honda Accords of the generation around the Acura TL and Acura CL of this time. A lot of these share components such as suspension and emission systems, as well as a few other general systems. And some of these items that I'm going to talk about will be applicable to the Acura TL, Acura CL, and Honda Accord. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's give you what I would look out for when purchasing any one of these vehicles during this time. Number one on the list, lower ball joints. Acura TLs and Acura CLs of this time and Honda Accords of a similar time share this distinct issue with lower ball joints. Lower ball joints get worn out over time with any car, but specifically these tend to be a higher wear item on the Acura CL and Acura TL. What happens is the lower ball joint develops play and rapidly evolves into shearing off. So what you need to do to look out for this is grab the top side of the wheel and the bottom side of the wheel with the car slightly jacked up and check for play. This could also be a sign of a wheel bearing issue, but specifically this could indicate a loose lower ball joint. So when negotiating with the buyer on a car, you want to factor that in. Lower ball joints themselves are not expensive, but the time to replace them could be expensive if you're not doing it yourself. So make sure that you look out for lower ball joints and remedy this situation before it becomes a more catastrophic issue. The catastrophic side of this would be when the lower ball joint actually separates from the lower control arm and the wheel detaches from the vehicle. Number two on the list is main fuel relay. Main fuel relay is a common problem from Acuras and Acuras and Hondas during the 80s and 90s. Specifically, what happens is that the main fuel relay heats up, and over time the solder joints at the electrical connections within the relay separate, causing an intermittent or completely disconnect of the relay itself, which controls the fuel pump. A good thing to do when you're looking at buying a car that might have a potential main fuel relay is test the car in warm conditions if you can. If not, take the car out for a spin, bring it back, and then start it up again. More often than not, after you cycle the car and drive it for an extended period of time, it will heat up, and then that solder connection will then separate. So drive the car, come back, turn the car off, and turn it back on. That will sometimes indicate, if it's a failure to turn back on, that a main fuel relay could be a potential cause. Main fuel relays themselves aren't expensive, and companies like JDI Industries, or Jordan Distributive Industries, I believe, and I'll post the URL at the bottom of the video here, sell a conversion kit where you can convert from the OEM relay to a common auto parts store relay, which significantly drops the cost of this. Also makes it widely available so that if the relay does go out again in the future, you can stop by any auto parts store and pick up a relay. This will save you time, effort, and a lot of hassle, because sometimes the main fuel relay fails at an inopportune time, requiring the vehicle to be towed to a shop or back to your place at an expense to you. So take a look and see if a main fuel relay could be a potential problem for your no-start situation. Number three on the list, automatic transmission failures. If you're looking at an automatic transmission vehicle, be on the lookout specifically for automatic transmission failures and symptoms. A failure could be that the car fails to go into gear or slips in gear, also producing an error light indicator on the dash, such as a flashing drive light indicator on the cluster. Any automatic transmission issues in a vehicle that you're looking to purchase should be cautiously evaluated to make sure that the vehicle itself isn't going to be a costly repair. Most automatic transmission issues I'd stay away from, because it would require a complete automatic transmission replacement, and because of the inherent design issues with the automatic transmissions of this time for these vehicles, it could be a repeat issue time and time again. Not to say that automatic transmissions should be stayed away from completely, as some manufacturers have resolved this through a refinement in their processes. Just be on the lookout for a costly repair here. Number 4 on the list is HID ballast. HID ballast becomes an issue when water intrusion occurs within the ballast. An easy way to determine if you have a vehicle with a HID ballast issue is by turning the headlights on. If one headlight turns on, or if a headlight intermittently turns on, that could be a sign of water intrusion within the HID ballast and should be replaced. Number 5 on the list is oil leaks. Specifically oil leaks around the VTEC solenoid or the oil pump located on the passenger side and behind the block of the engine. The best way to look for this is look under the vehicle to see if there's any obvious signs of oil leaking, but also turn the wheel on the vehicle to the driver's side so that the wheels point to the left. This will allow you to look behind the passenger wheel to see if there's any oil leaks present. An oil leak here could be costly depending on what it's coming from. If it's coming from the VTEC solenoid, the gasket and the time to replace is not that much, but if it is coming from the oil pump itself, this could be a costly repair as it requires you to remove the timing belt, the oil pan, and the pump to actually replace the O-ring that is a common failure point. It's going to be a costly repair, so factor that into your discussion when purchasing the vehicle. Number 6 is subframe rots, specifically on the Acura TL and Acura CL of this time. An AC condensation drain drains over the subframe and drips down onto the subframe. Condensation from the AC system is slightly acidic, and when combined with salt and water, if your vehicle is in the northeast or salt belt, this could exacerbate the issue and cause subframe failure fairly quickly. Much like the oil leaks, you want to take a look on the passenger side by rotating the wheels to the left. This will allow you to look behind the passenger wheel and see if there's a subframe rot. It'll be quite obvious. There will be holes in the subframe, obvious rust, or a complete disconnection of the subframe itself. This can be a very costly repair and requires numerous hours to complete. We've done a video on that here on this channel. We've also come up with a remedy to this that I highly suggest that you look at if you're going to go and do a subframe replacement. A subframe replacement will have to be sourced from a donor vehicle, as often these are no longer available from the manufacturer. Something to keep in mind when you're purchasing a vehicle. On the list is IACV, or idle air control valve. When the vehicle initially starts up, it does not use the IACV to control the idle. But after the vehicle warms up, it transfers control of the idle over to the IACV. IACVs are known for 2 failures, one getting blocked up in their passages, but also the electronic controlled valve can fail. This will present itself by a sporadic or bouncing idle under warm conditions. What you want to do here is take a look and see if the coolant may need to be bled. Sometimes the air going through the IACV, because the coolant needs to be bled, will actually cause this symptom, but also it will present itself with a check engine light or a CEL. So if you have a CEL illuminated for an IACV, you're probably looking at the neighborhood of about $150 to $200 to have that component replaced. I'll also note that the aftermarket space is prone with problems for the IACV, and so I would recommend going with a name brand, and not just a generic brand, but if you can, and you feel like it's financially advantageous for you, go with an OEM IACV. It'll actually perform better. Number 8 on the list, evap leaks. These are emission leaks coming from the fuel system. There are 2 issues here with the Acura TL and Acura CL of this time. One is pretty inexpensive, which is the gas cap gasket. What happens is that over time it compresses or it develops holes or tears within that gasket. This will allow fuel vapors to leak and an incomplete seal of the evap system. A check engine light will most likely illuminate for this condition. The other situation is the purge valve. Purge valve is connected to the canister or the charcoal canister located under the vehicle. You can also do a smoke test to determine if there's any other evap leaks in the system. These are just 2 of the most common, but it could be anywhere along the system line. So you may be advised to do a smoke test with your mechanic to see where the actual evap leak is. But just know that these are common problems. Number 9 on the list is crank sensors. This seems to be more predominantly an issue with the 03 Acura CL Type S 6-speed, but it could present itself with any one of these vehicles and has been noted to be a common failure point with both Acura TLs and Acura CLs of this time. Depending on which crank sensor it is, it could be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 or $150. Now, while these are estimates, the time to actually replace them could be quite costly. The sensors themselves are relatively inexpensive, but the time to get to them and replace them could be the costly component. Either way, this will present itself more commonly with a check engine light. So if you have a crank sensor failure point, or if you have a crank sensor failure with your vehicle that you're looking at, you may want to investigate the cost. And lastly on the list, number 10, is power steering failures or power steering leaks. Power steering leaks are more commonly with the internal gaskets with the power steering pump or the two gaskets that attach to the high pressure hose leading from the pump down to the rack. Now, the hoses themselves can present a leak at the crimp point or at the gasket point. The gaskets themselves are pretty inexpensive, but the high pressure line is in the neighborhood of $200 to $250. The time to actually replace the internal gaskets of the power steering pump is more costly. You could get a remanufactured pump, but that will also incur a cost. How this presents is with the pump whining. So as air enters into the system, the pump no longer has that continuous fluid and lubrication and will present as a whine. This will be more commonly heard when you're putting it under load, so you're turning the wheel. Either way, you may want to factor this in to your decision to buy the vehicle. So I hope you like this video, and more specifically, I hope this better informs you about what to look out for when purchasing one of these vehicles. These are just my top 10 items that I look out for when purchasing any one of these vehicles. If you think I've missed anything, please leave a comment down below so that others can learn from your experiences. And if you like this content, please leave a comment down below as well. If you guys like this content, I'll continue making these as there's other vehicles that we can cover, such as the Acura Legend. We can also cover other Acuras and Hondas so that others who are looking to purchase these vehicles can be better informed about the problems and can better negotiate a price when purchasing. See you on the next one.